This year is an invitation for us to engage with the Christmas story with fresh eyes. Lana Gasho and I have created stories that pull back the curtain and invite us to imagine some of the behind-the-scenes discussions that may have taken place around these familiar events. In them, we've sought to remain true to Scripture while also taking some creative license to give us a different vantage point on how that first Christmas came together. Thursday evening, we listened in as Gabriel, angelic messenger of God, was sent by the Lord Most High to deliver a message to the Magi in a dream that they should not return to Herod after seeing the newborn Messiah. The star and now the Magi had proclaimed the birth of a king, and this news threatened King Herod. This week, we listen in as Gabriel receives his next assignment. With that, sit back, relax, and imagine with us as Rhonda Bueller reads chapter 6 and the conclusion of a 2020 Advent. What could go wrong?
Gabriel, lead angelic messenger for the Lord Most High, was in a hurry. He had just completed his last mission, an urgent travel advisory dream message warning a group of magi to avoid Jerusalem on their way home from Bethlehem. On his return, he was met by Michael, who told Gabriel that the boss wanted to see him in his office, stat. Gabriel hadn't even taken the time to brush the stardust from his feathers before he hurried on his way. He tried to pick up his pace by spreading his wings to use the slight breeze coming from the east to give him some loft. As he sped down the path, he wondered if he was in trouble again. He couldn't think of anything that he had done wrong, not lately anyway. The travel advisory message had been delivered successfully. He had even hung around to ensure that the Magi had left the area without any accidental contact with someone from Herod's court. Everything had gone according to God's plan, to the best of his knowledge, so he was puzzled and worried about the need for his urgent meeting. It didn't take long for Gabriel to reach the office of his boss, and as he entered the open doorway, he could see the expected warm glow of light and swirling rainbow of colors that always surrounded God, the Lord Most High. For a moment, Gabriel forgot his worries as he drew closer to the figure that became distinct in the light as the light parted, and he heard God's warm voice say, "Welcome, Gabriel, welcome. You're just the messenger I need and right on time for your next assignment." Gabriel's eyes widened and his voice reflected his surprise as he exclaimed, "Already? I just got back from seeing the Magi safely out of Bethlehem area. Has something gone wrong?" "Ah, yes, the Magi," said God with a slight smile. No, everything with that is fine. In fact, excellent work there, Gabriel. I especially like the way that you got them on the road early by prodding the camels awake. For some reason, humans don't seem to appreciate the range of the sound that the camels can make. Truly inspired work, my magnificent messenger. "Well, thank you, sir," replied Gabriel, still feeling a bit puzzled. "I'm always glad to carry out your plans, but since we were successful in keeping Herod from finding out where baby Jesus is located, I can't imagine what this next assignment would be, or why it would be so urgent." "Yes," said God, "I can see why you have a false sense of security at this point, but Gabriel, you should never underestimate Lucifer and his malice. He doesn't give up easily, and working through Herod, it won't be long before he'll try again to destroy my son. Herod will soon realize that he was outwitted by the Magi, and he'll begin seeking the new king of the Jews with a greater sense of urgency in order to destroy this potential rival to his power and position. We need to prevent him from finding the child and his family." Still puzzled, Gabriel pointed out, "But you've repeatedly said that people who seek your son will find him. Why is that different?" "Ah, now I understand your confusion," said God gently. "The difference is that there is in their heart and mind. Those who seek him with an open, humble hearts and minds will find love and respond by worshiping him. But Herod is the epitome of a stiff-necked people with his mind and heart closed tightly. His purpose is to destroy my son, and it is far too soon for that." As God continued speaking, Gabriel heard the firm resolve in his tone. "I will watch over my son. No harm will come to him until his purpose on earth is fulfilled and the time for his death is imminent." Gabriel stiffened in surprise, and his voice was filled with alarm as he said, "His death? What do you mean, his death?" Don't tell me we've gone through all this effort to send your son to earth, and your plan is for him to die there? In his agitation, Gabriel started pacing between the doorway and the desk, sitting across the room. Angrily, he continued, "You always saying you have a plan. I should trust the plan. Well, this kind of crazy plan is that, I ask you." "Gabriel, my faithful friend," God said soothingly, "I see that this has upset you, and you really got your feathers ruffled over this. Please try to calm down so I can explain. I understand that it doesn't make sense unless you have the full picture in mind." Gabriel stopped his pacing, and God gently put his hand on his shoulder and coaxed him. "Come on now, have a seat in the chair over by the door, and I'll help you see why this is necessary." As Gabriel sat at the edge of his chair, he still was so upset that he didn't notice that he was sitting on his right wing, and his left one was caught on the arm of the chair instead of being safely tucked beneath him. He watched anxiously as God half sat on the edge of his desk, folded his arms, and with a solemn look in his eyes, started talking. "Do you remember," God began, "the covenant that I made with Abram, promising that I would make him a great nation and that all the people on earth would be blessed through him?" With a frown, Gabriel looked up at God and said, "Yes, of course I do. His descendants became the nation of Israel, after all." "And do you remember," God continued, "the covenant I made with Moses and the Israelites on Mount Sinai after I brought them out of Egypt?" Gabriel sat up even straighter and thought for a moment before saying, "I know that basically your promise that if they followed you, then you would be their God. I don't remember all the details in the fine print. A covenant that takes up an entire book is a bit long, don't you think?" God smiled slightly as Gabriel observed, held out one hand, and said mildly, "In my defense, I was attempting to reveal myself to them and teach them how to live as my people. They needed guidance for the day-to-day running of their community, but also to know how to interact with me." "Well," responded Gabriel wearily, "it seems to me that these humans haven't been very good about sticking to the terms of your covenant." "True, but not surprising," acknowledged God. "Over time, we've gone through many cycles of pronouncing judgment and giving mercy. I knew they would struggle with sin, so I gave them a way of restoring our relationship by atoning up for their sins through a blood sacrifice, but they abused the sacrificial system that I gave them. It's now time to fulfill the old law and begin a new covenant. And I'll do that through my son. Not only will he represent me to all the people, but ultimately he will pay the price of atonement for all their sins through his own blood. Once the penalty for their sins is paid, I'll be able to restore a relationship with each of them and bring them into my presence." Gabriel shook his head in wonder as he said, "You've told me before how much you love them, but wow, just wow. This is really a whole nother level that I never imagined. I made them to be in close relationship with me," said God. "I intended to give them every opportunity I can, now and in the future, to return to me, even if it means meeting them more than halfway." Suddenly, Gabriel's eyes widened, and he jumped to his feet in alarm and blurted out, "I just realized you sent your Savior to the world down there as a helpless infant. So much could go wrong with that plan. Herod, for one. What are we going to do about Herod?" God chuckled as he replied, "That's exactly why I called you here, Gabriel. Your next assignment is going to remedy this wrinkle that Lucifer has created through Herod." Gabriel straightened to his full height and proudly said, "I'm ready, sir. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do." Good, said God. "Your next assignment is to tell Joseph to move his new family to Egypt. That will take the child completely out of danger from Herod's cruelty." This reminds me of how you saved Moses when he was a baby. Isn't it ironic you rescued Moses and the Israelites by bringing them out of Egypt? Now you're rescuing Jesus by sending him back to Egypt? Why, it's almost as if you planned it that way. "Almost if," agreed God with a small smile. Gabriel laughed softly and said, "Okay, so I need to tell Joseph to immigrate to Egypt. Now let me think. What's the best way to do this?" Gabriel tapped his foot softly as he thought over his options. Suddenly, foot stopped. A frown appeared on his forehead, and he looked wearily at God before saying suspiciously, "Hold on just a minute. This sounds an awful lot like a level 3 Dreamer Revealed message. It's a level 3 dream or reveal message, isn't it? Oh no, I think I'm feeling my head beginning to twitch. With exasperating look on it of pain, Gabriel began massaging the area around his left eye. God grinned and confirmed, yes, it certainly is a level 3 DMR, and an urgent one at that. As Gabriel started shaking his head and backing towards the door, God said, it's going to be okay, Gabriel. There's nothing to fear. I know you can do this. You've got the job done last time, didn't you? Barely, explained Gabriel. If you hadn't been there, it might have gone so wrong and been such a disaster. You have an advantage this time, though, God said. It won't be your first level 3 dreamer reveal, and Joseph is sure to recognize you from the last time. He'll be more inclined to receive and follow your message this time around. So many things could go wrong, moaned Gabriel. This time, I'll have to avoid waking both Mary and Joseph. Have you thought about that? And they just got settled into Bethlehem. They aren't going to want to move again with an infant, let alone go to Egypt of all places. Gabriel, said God encouragingly, I'm depending on you to be your most persuasive. I know you can convince him. And if it helps, you can tell him that this is only a temporary move and that he'll be notified when it's safe to return. Okay, grumbled Gabriel. I'll do it, of course. I'm into it. I'll do it. It's your plan, after all. With a deep breath, he straightened up to his full height and looked directly at God. With firm purpose, he said, I'll deliver this message to the best of my ability, sir. Now, that's the spirit, exclaimed God with a pleased smile. Now, you'd better get going. We need to be on the road and out of the area as soon as possible. Gabriel spun towards the doorway and with a snappy wave said, I'm on my way, sir. And as he hurried down the path, away from the office, Gabriel thought to himself, you can do this, Gabriel. A level 3 dreamer reveal message to save the Messiah who will save the world. If God himself is sending you, what could go wrong? The end.